Hi there. So if you're anything like me, you need to spend a lot of time heads down researching stuff and analyzing it, especially the latter. Can feel like it takes a lot of time, and sometimes it just feels easier to skip it altogether and instead select snippets out of the resources that we collected. So actually to help me with that, lately I started to use NotebookLM a lot more, helping me with research tasks and even content ideation, or even just seeing like where I could have improvement areas in some of the sources and data that I collect. I think NotebookLM is one of the most useful tools available out there today, and I think it's not getting enough attention. And especially after Google released this new Gemini LLM versions, I think it's worthwhile to revisit this tool. So let's have a look first at NotebookLM and understand what it is. So it's primarily a research assistant, and in that is actually sandboxed around the sources that you decide to give it to it. So it can be very, very focused and not just trying to get content out of its general knowledge. And so it can be really, really precise and on point with what you need it to do. So like I said, it's using sources for reference. What's nice about it is that it makes really good citations. So not only shows you kind of where the source is from out of a quote, but it really shows you where it got that quote from. And I will show you that later. It supports a lot of source types and a lot of sources. So it's using Gemini's really large, humongous context window and helping you cram in it entire books, videos, so you can take advantage of having that increased pool of context. And what's interesting is that not only outputs text, but audio too, and maybe we will give it a try. Well, let's get started immediately with an example. So in this case, I created a YouTube video research notebook to help me research into ACP funnels, something that it's interesting both from a content perspective, as well as I might look into that to implement this kind of funnel in my own startup. So in this case, what I did was to go to NotebookLM and creating a new notebook and pull in resources from YouTube directly into here. So the process is really quick, and it creates for me already a little summary of what I can learn from these resources. I can also use Perplexity, for example, to fetch a lot of those sources and add them here, whether they are YouTube videos, URL, or simple text. In this case, I'm happy with just YouTube video research, just because I think there is a lot more kind of fresh content about it. And in this case, I have a prompt that I made for it. So you're a YouTube content expert and you're planning a new video in the topic ACP audience. In this case, I'm looking at content inspiration. So I wanted to provide key common themes across all these videos, as well as ideas for intros and outros. And maybe showcase unique angles, points of views. And generally, it's helpful in prompting to highlight what you want to get out of it. Otherwise, you're just going to get a very bland summary. So let's give this a try. And it's generally pretty fast too, which is incredible. So in this case, let me hide this section. It immediately generated the summary for me. I can look into it and, for example, let's zoom in a little bit. I can see common themes across the videos. So building a business from content/community, the importance of high value content, and a niche specialization is very important. It's interesting that it shows me like what could be a good intro, like a personal anecdote or a problem solution type of hook. What else is very interesting here is the angles and perspectives that I collected. So it could be that Reddit is really useful for idea validation, and it just gives me a little interesting snippet here, and it even references the source And like I said at the beginning, it's very interesting because it shows me what is the portion of that transcript that is useful. Well, in this case, it considers the whole transcript, but let's try another one. So yeah, in this case, there you have it. It highlighted the passage belonging to this key point. Yeah, so this is really cool. Something that I like to do when it gets pretty long and I don't know, I want to go out there and take a run or start cooking some dinner. I like to actually take this whole output and generate a conversation out of it that I can use as my own podcast, basically. So yeah, I can basically have a little fun with it as well. It will take a while though, so we might come back to it later. Let's now have a look at a second example. In this case, a competitor messaging analysis. So for this example, I focused on e-learning. There is a ton of players out there. And in this case, I thought this could be interesting for somebody like, in this case, Brilliant.org. So everybody else here is somewhat of a competitor. So what I did was to go again to NotebookLM, create a new notebook, and actually punch in all the URLs of my competitors, including my own URL. You will see that in a moment. Why? So in this case, what I want to do is, just have my first prompt telling NotebookLM to actually analyze all these websites, understand the main messaging, what services, and what are the primary target audiences, as well as the tone of voice used in the messaging. This is kind of helpful, again, to do that initial part of the research, which is gathering all the material and the insights. So let's give this a try. Again, it should be pretty fast at this. There you have it. Very quickly, we can see that, there are these main messages like skill development and career advancement, services like courses, skill paths, AI-related courses, and even team training. I suspect some of the more B2B competitors cater towards this. And I can actually check that in the sources. So Code Academy focuses a lot on that. And then the primary target audience, as well as the overall tone of voice, is here too. Now, what's interesting is, let's say I am, like I mentioned, Brilliant.org, and I want to look into other opportunities compared to what I'm offering today. And in this case, I am asking NotebookLM to extract 3 key positioning gaps, as well as 3 opportunities, at least for my website to differentiate itself. And I mentioned that I am Brilliant.org in the prompt because the LLM here will not know that necessarily. Let's actually add this second prompt. And I think this is when it will get interesting. There you have it. And let's see, key positioning gaps. So career professional advancement. Brilliant doesn't really have that. It could be by choice because it's more a B2C type of focus. Nevertheless, interesting opportunity, I believe, for them, as well as, again, team training, somewhat related to business and professional advancement. And then the breadth of subject matter. Brilliant focuses a lot on STEM, and they will want to keep that focus. However, it's good to know where others are positioned. This gives me a pretty good idea quickly of how or what I could look into compared to what my business is today. And this can become really helpful if you put in your own competitors and extract this kind of information very quickly from them. It could also be automated with a weekly or monthly report about what your competitors have been up to, especially if you start analyzing their blog sections as well as some of their sales activities. So I think that's quite interesting and something to look into further. Let's now have a look at our last example, in this case, a landing page optimizer. So I created this actually for my own startup's landing page because we've been looking more and more recently into founder-led sales and content. And yeah, I think it can be optimized for that a lot more than it is today. So in this case, I took my own website as a reference, together with a couple of really good videos on the topic and a competitor that I believe is actually doing quite well at that job today. So I went ahead and created a new notebook, and I punched in all these different sources. So what I will do here is actually now prompt NotebookLM to, again, be that kind of expert. In this case, also a conversion expert. The goal of any landing page is to convert, right? I tell it who am I and what is the landing page that I want to optimize, as well as a bit of a quick overview of what the types of sources I included. So I help NotebookLM orient itself around what I provided it with. And the goal in this case is to analyze all this information and in particular structure, messaging, potential effectiveness in driving conversions. Again, I want that to be the goal number one of my landing page. So in this case, I ask it to then provide 3 specific areas where my page can be improved, and then 5 recommendations for optimizing my copy, headlines, subheaders, copy in general, and CTAs. So now let's give this a go. And after a while, it will generate the report for me and analysis. Voila. So let me go to the top, showcasing social proof and trust signals more prominently. Yeah, that's something that I could be doing in my landing page, addressing key pain points and objections directly. So yeah, this is actually true. We highlight a lot in terms of the time savings and the simplification of the process. And in general, yeah, I think this is actually a very good point. You know, why don't we talk more about the pain points that we're solving for? What Supergrow does well in this case is have pain points that are very well phrased, like writer's block, scatter idea, time constraints. I think these are keywords that can be very beneficial, and I think I might start using them too. Yeah, and then there are other suggestions in terms of streamlining the call to action. So yeah, simple changes that I can make today that I think can be really effective. And then optimizations specifically for the copy of my landing page. It suggests actually a more detailed headline, as well as highlighting more of the benefits it brings. And then it tells me, hey, instead of this, I can be more specific about each activity, repurposing, AI-powered content creation, scheduling, and analytics. In general, it finds the copy somewhat generic and focuses on features rather than benefits. It is true that we focus a lot on features, so it gives me also very good suggestions here of what I can do. So yeah, I will take this today and actually make these changes on the page. And yeah, it focuses again on the CTA because it drives a lot of that conversion, right? So instead of just get started free, it tells me, hey, how about you build in that 7-day free trial messaging into a call to action, or you provide a way to schedule a demo and see ContentRadar in action then. This is actually quite interesting because a lot of people asked us to walk them through the app before they can actually even sign up at all. Yeah, so these are all fantastic ideas I will look into. And yeah, this has been a bit of an overview of how I use NotebookLM. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. I am happy to share the notebooks as well. Thank you.